Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to my week 12 of 2022 weekly wrap up. We have 14 books to talk about today, so it was another good week. I definitely dived back into some fan fiction, which I'm excited to talk about. Some of it was good, some of it was like not so great, so we'll get to it. It was also the week of Bridgerton, which I will have a video going up. You'll probably actually see that video before you see this video because I'm going to put that one up as soon as I film it. But before we dive into the books I read, we do have some new channel member shout outs to do. Oh, this makes me happy when I have these every week. Thank you so much for being willing to support my channel. I just hit 13,000 subscribers this week, which is so cool. Like, oh, thank you so much for choosing to follow me and support me and, read books that I recommend to you. That just, it makes my heart so happy. So we have VT or VI-T. I'm not sure how to say this. It's literally VI-T is the name of the new channel member. And they joined at the Faded Friend level. So thank you so much, V, not sure. Happy to have you. And then Anne Boleyn, I hope your head and neck are feeling great, Anne, with a name like Anne Boleyn, which would be amazed if that is your real name. That is amazing. If that is just a screen name, that is also amazing. But Anne joined at the Sassy supporter level, so thank you both so much. There was also a channel member who rejoined, which I don't usually talk about rejoining, like you get the shout out when you originally joined, but this person has a channel name redacted, so I'm not sure who it is. So if this is you, I want to make sure you have your benefits, so reach out to me on Instagram or Discord if I need to give you benefits. If you already have them, great. So anyway, those are the new channel members. Let us dive into what I read because, as I said, we have some great ones to dive into here. Let me just pull up my notes. It'd be easier probably if I do that. Okay, so let me scooch over so we can pop these up here. So the first book that I finished this week was Parks and Provocation by Juliette Cross. I believe this book comes out, it's April 7th or 10th. I think it's April 7th. This is the first contemporary romance from Juliette Cross, who is a friend of the channel. So I always put that disclaimer out there. I am a bit biased because I love how she writes and I love the stories that she gives us, but this is her entry to the Green Valley Heroes and is going to be a part of Smarty Pants Romance, which is Penny Reed's publisher, imprint and everything. And I loved this book. It was so cute. This is, as I said, it's a contemporary. It is a small town. I wanted to call it in one character's mind, this is an enemies to lover, but in the other character's mind, it's not. They've just been waiting for their chance to have a relationship with this person. So that's very interesting. So there's a pining hero. There is, it's small town. He's a firefighter. The characters are Jenn and Lola is in town because she's lost her job. So she's staying with her, I think it's her grandmother. And she has a podcast that's a dating podcast that she has. And the very beginning of this book is that she's locked her keys in her car with the radio going, and Jed is a firefighter and he gets sent to open her car for her. And they were kind of they were kind of like enemies in school. It was more that they had some misunderstandings, and the heroine, he had a nickname that he called her and she had kind of a mean nickname that she called him. And so they had this little bit of a rivalry going, but a lot of it was he wanted to date her and he didn't quite know how to go about it. And he actually asked her to his school. I don't know if it was prom or the spring formal or homecoming. It was one of those. And he was sincere, but she overheard his friends asking him if it was a joke because they didn't understand why he would want to go on a date with her. And so because she feared a Carrie situation or something, she wouldn't go with him. And that just was always kind of a split between them or whatever. But anyway, she's back in town now, and he asks that in return for unlocking her car, that she go on a date with him. And she does not want to go on a date with him. However, she has a podcast that is about dating. And so she agrees to go out with him, and it's kind of false pretenses. So the thing, though, that, like, this could be seen as a trick, this could be seen as being kind of cruel. However, Jed is a real good spirit about it once he finds out, because he gets invited to be on the podcast to talk about the date, and Lola is, like, rating the date, and she doesn't give him a perfectly high score for it, and he's like, well, now you need to give me another chance, and she's like, no, I only do first dates, and since they're on air, he kind of forces her into having a second date where he's gonna do his best. I loved this. Jed is all in from the beginning. He is pursuing her. He wants to make it happen. And Lola is very reluctant, not only because of, you know, her previous misconceptions about him and, you know, his feelings towards her, but also because she's not planning to be in town for that long. She wants to get a job and then she's going to leave. This is supposed to be a temporary situation. So there's that. I enjoyed this. I gave this 4.5 stars, and it's a 3.5 on the spice scale, because once the spice train starts rolling, it is a good time. Juliette writes great smut when she writes it, you know. So, love this. Make sure you pre-order this or get yourself a copy when this comes out, because it's going to be a good one. Then I did a reread of Ivan, and I also was annotating it while I was doing it. Quick mention, I want to talk about annotating, because getting a little bit of nipple there. I get asked about how I annotate books a lot, because I'll post pictures on my Instagram when I am, like, annotating, and people are like, oh, I'd love you to do a video about annotating. I'm sorry, sweet friends. I do not have a system. There is nothing intelligent I could say about how I annotate or what it is. I literally just underline quotes that I like. That's it. I use a coordinating color usually with what's on the front of the book, just because I like colors to match, but there is no rhyme or reason to this. I used green highlighter and green pen and a green tabby, and I just highlighted things that I like. I'm not really picking out plot points. I'm not really doing anything other than swoony lines. And I know people are curious. I understand. There are other people that would be better to get their annotating advice from them, because I am not annotating it for any other purpose than, like, swoon-worthy things. Even with, like, Carnal Urges, which I recently did, and that one has just tons of tabs, and I did use some cute little stickers that my friend In Love and Words made. I'm literally just tabbing swoony things. There's no rhyme or reason to what I annotate. But anyway, I reread Ivan because I didn't really love The Savage very much. You know, I've talked about that. It was not my favorite Sophie Lark. I felt feelings about it. We won't talk about it again because we've already done it. And I don't want to dwell on a book that I didn't love when I love so many books by Sophie. And so I decided to reread Ivan because I was just feeling a certain type of way, and I wanted to go back to Ivan because I've reread quite a few books in The Brutal Birthright and in Kingmakers, but I haven't reread any of the older ones, and I actually still have half of the Underworld series that I need to read, which are her, like, oldest books. So I decided to reread Ivan, and I may work my way through rereading and then read the ones I haven't read. So I reread this. In case you don't know, this is actually a great book to start with of Sophie's. Like, I know that there's a particular order that I always share, and that's if you want to start with Brutal Prince, because that series is more consistent and it leads you into Kingmakers. But if you want to start with a shorter book and one that can kind of be read as a standalone to start, you could start with Ivan. This is an assassin named Sloane, and she gets sent to kill the head of the Moscow Bratva, which is Ivan Petrov, and him and his brother Dom basically are in charge of this. And she is a hit woman. She's an assassin. She is sneaky. She is tough. Her father taught her to be everything that she is, and she gets this job to kill Ivan, and it's for a very substantial amount of money, enough money for her to, like, take a few years off of killing. And she's like, okay, I'll give it a try. The thing is, Ivan is paranoid. He lives in a monastery, like, partially underground in some places, and she knows she's gonna have to be sneaky because she cannot physically outmatch Ivan, but she uses, like, injections to kill, and she has a special cocktail all mixed up for Ivan. So she gets in there to kill him, and he hears her, and he stops her from killing him, and now takes her captive, and is trying to figure out who is trying to kill him. And he may use some sexual devices to make that happen. So I actually upped my rating to 5 stars for this because going back to the beginning of Ivan and Sloane, it gave me so much joy. I can't even fully explain it. I love this couple so much. If you've read all of Sophie Lark, like if you've done the journey, you know why I love Ivan and Sloane so much. There may be better books she's written, but there are very few couples that touch me the way that Ivan and his little fox do. So yeah, I gave this 5 stars this time, and the spice is about a 3.5. There's not a ton of it in here. The stuff there is very sexy. There is some dubious consent, obviously, because he's doing some things to her while she's his captive, but there's more like, and there's some violence too, because, you know, mafia. It's a thing. Then I read Moonglow by Kristen Callihan. This was on my TBR for March, to read a book that started with the same letter as the month. This is book 2 in the Darkest London series, which is a gaslight fantasy / like historical paranormal, whichever way you want to go with it. It fits into those. This one is about Daisy Craigmore, who is finally a widow. She had a emotionally and a physically abusive husband, and she's finally free, and she is a sexually free woman as well. And in the beginning of this book, she's having a tryst, and they get attacked by a werewolf, and it's pretty brutal and terrifying. And then there is Ian Ranoff, who is the Marquis of Northrop, and he is a lichen, which I guess is like different than a werewolf. They explain in here how they're different and like what's going on. And he's trying to solve who this killer is. So he steps out and he actually saves Daisy, and then they're kind of on this journey together to find out who, like, why this were is attacking people. So yeah, this had, let me see what I put in for this. Yeah, so this is enemies to lovers, werewolves. She's a widow. He's actually a widower as well, because he's lived for a very long time, so he's lost his wife and son. There's also a mystery happening in this one. These books aren't overly like spicy, and the mystery is really great. The thing that does make them drag a little bit, what I noticed both in Firelight and Moonglow, is that it is very plot heavy. Like the romance, when we have it, it's swoony and like it is sexy when we get it, but a lot of this is on the mystery, so keep that in mind. So I give this 4 stars, and it is like a 2 on the spice scale for me. And the trigger warnings for this are, there's violence and gore, there's loss of a child, there's suicidal attempts that we see, not by our main characters. And then there also is a depiction of syphilis, and if you know, like, syphilis in the olden times was extremely, I mean, it's bad now, but there's ways to like treat it now, whereas it's not so great in here, so just keep that in mind. There's also, yeah, gore is probably the best way to say it. There are some pretty disturbing images that we see in that. Then I finally read The Auction, which is a fanfic. Hold on, let me get back to this. Which is by LoveBitka 8. Something in my tooth, sorry. This is one that has come highly recommended for me. This is on most people's fanfic lists, right behind Manacled, so I really wanted to get to it. This one is Dramione. You can find it on an Archive of Her Own. Everyone always asks me when I talk about fan fiction. I get all of mine from Archive of Our Own because you're able to download those and put them onto your Kindle. That is the only place that I read fan fiction currently. So if I'm mentioning a fanfic, you can find it on AO3. If that changes at some point, I'll let you know. So this is a Draco and Hermione fanfic where alternate universe, the Dark Lord has won. This is also the 3rd in a series, and a lot of people told me I had to read all the right things and like do the right thing beforehand. I did not, and guess what? I was perfectly fine doing it because this is actually an alternate universe of already an alternate universe story. So in my personal opinion, you can just read The Auction. Like I from the research that I did, people say to read the other 2 first because the, like, motivations of Draco, of, like, what happens in the auction, like, it's kind of the same thought process, because one of those books is actually from Draco's point of view in the series, whereas this one is just Hermione's point of view. But I didn't have a problem, and I enjoyed the book just fine without it. So this one is a Hermione gets her virginity and herself auctioned off at the beginning of this. She gets bought by the Malfoys. The women and men being sold in this are, you know, they completely belong to whoever they're bought. They have, what kind of device do they have put on them? A tattoo. They have a slavery-like tattoo of the person who owns them is in their skin. And so they cannot, like, get away from this person. They're, like, whether they're in a home or in a bill or wherever, like, they are confined to that space. And if they try to leave it, that tattoo will cause them extreme pain and they can, like, die from it, basically. It's pretty awful. So Hermione gets taken to Malfoy Manor, where Lucius and Narcissa and Draco are all living. And it's very interesting when she gets there because, surprisingly, Narcissa is very kind to her and makes sure she has what she needs. And the only time they are mean to her is when there are other people around. Lucius is very suspicious of her and not very nice, but he's also doesn't go out of his way to be cruel to her. And very much Draco does ignore her a lot in the beginning, but Narcissa is very nice to her, and it's very interesting. There becomes kind of this, like, Draco still has to do his work as a Death Eater. He's forced to go to certain meetings, and there's this club in, I forgot the name of the city, where the, like, younger kind of Death Eaters take their slaves to, show them off, and, like, they gamble and they fuck them and, like, rape them, let's not call it fighting, and rape them and all these things there. And Draco, like, Hermione kind of insists that Draco bring her so that she can see her friends, because her friends are there, this happening to her. So this is a very long fic. I think mine said it was, like, over 700 pages. With fanfic, it's hard to tell because it depends on which device you download it to. But this, you know, obviously this one was an enemies to lovers, captor captive, forced proximity. It's a very long journey. There's trigger warnings for major character death. There's dubious consent. Not very much of it, though. It's mostly happening to other people. The dubious things that happen to Hermione are when, again, like, when they're in front of other people, and then eventually she is, like, in on it, so it's not dubious consent anymore. It's consented because she's consenting for him to do things to her in front of people. And then, yeah, there is also mention of rape. Hermione is never raped, but we know that it's happening to the other slaves. There's torture, we do see some of it, and there is lots of angst. This I literally put as a trigger warning. So this was not in my favorites that I've read, and I will say, I think it depends on if you read, like, the auction first or you read Manacled first, because Manacled did a lot of things that the auction was doing, but I like Manacled better. The auction also, I was not happy with the ending of the auction. Not that it doesn't have an HEA, it does, but the last 20%, maybe less than that, maybe it's like 10%, there is a certain story thing that's happening, and I didn't care about it. I was like, why are we spending so much time on this? And then the ending, there's no epilogue to this one, it just ends very abruptly, and I felt like I had just been gutted and then left. Whereas, again, compared to Manacled, you go through, in my opinion, more pain than the auction made me go through. But Manacled, there are 3 epilogues, and we get to take our time processing everything we've been through. We get to see our characters and, like, what their life is going to be like going forward, and their happiness and bittersweet, because it's bittersweet. But the auction was just over, and I was like, you can't just end like this. Like, you can't do this to me. So I gave it 4 stars. And it's surprisingly, this one was only like a 3 on the spice scale, because there's a lot of, like, Draco feels very guilty for what is having to happen to Hermione. So it takes a long time for anything to happen between them, which is fine. It definitely should. But my point being is, like, it's not as spicy as some other ones, because a lot of the spice that happens is them pretending things, and then Draco feeling extremely guilty about them because he feels like she's being forced into everything. So, I mean, it's great. I understand why it's very high up for some people. But again, because I've read Manacled, and at this point, I've read like 20 or so fanfics, there are ones that I appreciated more for what I went through in this one. All right, then I read Lost in Paradise by J.A. Lowe. So this is kind of a funny thing. There is a book called Paradise, which I read last summer, maybe, and I had always been checking back in for there to be more books, and they just didn't happen, so I don't know what happened with the author there. But I was really enjoying that book because it's about a sex island. Like, it's a sex resort. So you can go stay at this resort and have any sexual pleasure done to you, whether you're single and you go there or whether you're a couple and you go there. You can have your every fantasy fulfilled. It's fantastic. The first one, I did not end up loving it because there was a surprise assault that happens to both the hero and the heroine by separate people, but like a surprise assault that happens to them in their sex club. And it just was not handled appropriately, in my opinion. And it didn't need to go all the way that it did. It felt very gratuitous, and I didn't understand. But I was very curious in this sex resort, and I wanted to read another book. So I finally saw that Lost in Paradise was out. This is about another couple. It's the sister of the heroine from the first one. What's her name? Ivy. And the thing that immediately became clear is that this is a parallel story, and that all 3 books that will be in this series, they're happening at the same time. So all the things that I didn't love about the first one, which don't happen to this couple, but like I had to see it again because she's the sister of this person. So when she gets raped, when that assault happens in that one, we have to deal with it in this one because it happens again. And there is an attack that happens to our heroine in this one too. It's a different kind of attack, and it doesn't happen at the sex island. But I was just so bummed because I was really enjoying this one. It's very like unconventional because at the sex resort, our heroine goes there and she's single. She meets Alex, who he is the brother of the owner. So he has invested some into the club, and so he can come whenever he wants to. And at this club, like if you're a single person and you stay there, there's a host who is the host of your room, and they're basically there to see to all your needs and pleasures. And so the host to Ivy's room, he gives her massages every morning, which can be a happy ending or not. He will bring someone with him if she wants. So there is an MMF scene that happens between her and her host and the person. And that's not who the love interest is. That's just her host. So the first sexual encounters in this book are actually between her and the host. And it didn't bother me at all. It was kind of fun. It was really sexy because this host, he's been doing this for a while. He really loves all the different people that he gets to pleasure and all these things. And then once her romance starts with Alex, like once they are officially seeing each other, she no longer is like engaging with the host. There is some voyeur stuff that happens where Alex has said that, okay, I want to be seeing you, so let's not sleep with anyone else. And so her host, though, like watches them together and then like cleans her up afterwards, which was pretty hot. So that might bother some people. I was fine with that. Again, the issue I had was there was an attack in this one that like came out of nowhere, and we had to see the attack that happened in the first book again. So I was just very disappointed, even though I really wanted to love it. So this one was a 3.5 star for me, but it was a 4 on the spice scale. Like, it was pretty up there. There were trigger warnings for domestic abuse, which was in a previous relationship, mentions of the rape that happened to her friend, and then if you won't like it, there is sharing of the female main character by someone who isn't the hero. So that might bother some people. Okay, then I read Going Public by Hudson Lin. This is book 2 in the, I think it's called the Jade Harbor series. I read the first book last year, really liked it. This is a gay romance. This one is a employee and boss, so it's an office situation. Elvin is the assistant for Ray. Ray is what I would like, he's not labeled as this, but I would call him, like, pansexual. Like, he's just attracted to pretty much everyone, in kind of a sweet way. And Alvin, he is actually demisexual. And so for him, he's struggling with these feelings he has for his boss, but it's also, like, you understand why, because he's, like, demisexual, he really needs this emotional connection before he gets physically into someone. And the only person he spends a significant amount of time with who isn't a family member is Ray. So it isn't a surprise. And when things start to happen between them, it's because of there's a business trip they have to go on to, and they end up staying at an Airbnb that only has one room and one bed, and they end up, like, cuddling, and there's some really sweet scenes where before anything sexual happens, there are these, like, intimate moments with them of, like, Ray is, like, holding Alvin's hand, and he'll, like, kiss his hand. There are, like, forehead kisses. There's just, like, hold me moments. Like, it was so sweet. The real downer in this book, and it was the same issue I had with the first one, is this one has a lot of business talk in it. And it really is a lot about the job that they're doing. And could I tell you what their work was? No, because I'm not here for that. Like, I'm just not. My perfect version of an office romance is, like, we see that they work at an office, and then they are just working on their relationship the whole time. That is an ideal office romance for me. I don't really want there to be ton. Like, I want the work to be the vehicle that gets them forced proximity, right? But then I don't want to hear about work. And this author, they do a great job, you know, with the business side, but I don't care about it. So it made significant portions of the book kind of boring when I just wanted to spend time exploring Alvin and Ray's, like, sexual interest, as well as, like, this beautiful relationship they've built over the years. Like, that's what I want it to be. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. Then I read a quick little novella, which was actually kind of a St. Patrick's Day novella, but I read it this week because I'd heard I don't normally read novellas. I don't normally read holiday-specific novellas. You guys know this about me. That's just not the trend that I do. A lot of my friends do that. I have no problem with them doing that. I think that's great. I just don't normally do that. But when I heard what this one was about, I had to do it. And one of my friends had read it, and I had to do it. So I read The Four Leaf by Jacquot. I don't know how to say this. There it is. This was a friends to lovers primal play novella. So we have Sam and Adrian, and they've been friends for years. And there's definitely an attraction between the two of them. And Adrian is seeing their attraction build. Sam actually catches him masturbating and saying her name. And so she's like, oh my God, he must be into me. He said my name. This is my chance. Adrian has wanted to make a move, but he's nervous because he is a primal dom and he's nervous about sharing that with her. And then it finally comes out, like, what his kink is, and Sam is like, I'm into it. So they start playing their games. It's all very consensual. He's very much like, we need a safe word. I need to tell me things you like. And so they play some games. Like, they play hide and seek. And he's like, when I catch you, I'm going to fuck you. It's very... I just love it. I don't see primal play enough when it isn't, like, a stalker situation, which I don't mind that. But this was actually, like, this was a lighter romance. Like, it has primal kink in it, but I wouldn't call this a dark romance. There's nothing, dubious about it or scary about it. It's just that the kink is a rougher kind of kink, and it's fun. And it's very much like, I want you to wear me type of thing. So I enjoyed this. I do think for a novella, it took too long to get to the fun stuff. Like, for me, my ideal novella is them to be the start off point, to be them doing something. And then if you want to fill in the details with it and be like, we've been dancing around each other for all this time and it's finally time for it to bubble over, like, I'm okay with that. But this was just, it took too long for us to get to the banging, for the fact that this was only 100 pages. Novellas rarely do it right for me. It's just how it is. So this was a 4-star, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale. I wish it could have been higher, but again, it's a novella, so there's not a lot of quantity, and, like, my spice scale goes by type of spice and how many they are. Like, it's both things. So there's that. Then I read a book that's actually on my April TBR. because I was going to lose the audiobook if I didn't listen to it. So I read In Your Wildest Scottish Dreams by Ranney. Here's a step back. This book is the first book in the, dang it, what's this series going to be called? I think the series might be called The McLeans. Yeah, I think the series might be called The McLeans. So this book was very interesting. So this book is about Glynis McLean, and for 7 years, she has been in America with her husband, and she's been among Washington's elite in the political world during the, which is now, like, leading up to the Civil War. Like, I think the Civil War is happening in America right now. Yes, it's like, it's ramping up there and everything. And she had run away with this man to marry him because she kissed her brother's best friend, Lennox Cameron, and he didn't reciprocate her feelings, or so she thought, and so she ran away because she was so embarrassed, and she's like, he's never going to love me. So she marries this American who proposes to her, and she goes to Washington with him because he's a diplomat there. And now she's back, and with the Civil War happening, Lennox is now a shipbuilder, and he's helping build blockade runners for the Confederate Army. And Glynis is back, and all of his feelings that he had, because he did have feelings for her, but he was shocked when she kissed him, and then she didn't stay around long enough for him to figure it out, and she was so embarrassed. So he never married anyone else because he was kind of pining after her. And now they're back in the same place. Her family is in trouble. She's a widow now. She was already in trouble when she was in America. She was pretty much starving because her husband didn't leave anything behind for her when he died. So she will maybe need to have like a marriage of convenience to save her family. And Lennox could be the person for that. However, Lennox doesn't just want to be a marriage of convenience because he's loved her all this time. So there we go. There's also a very big mystery in here. There is espionage and murders happening, and so they need to figure out what's going on with that. And I was okay with it. There were big portions of this book that were so focused on the mystery that I didn't feel their relationship really building until all of a sudden they're getting married. There was some great sexy times between them when they were married. There was actually some very like inventive conversations and like a little bit of like praise kink going on and dirty talk. That was very like, you know, I love that stuff, so I like it. But I just didn't get enough time to like revel in their relationship. And that's always something that bugs me, is when I don't get enough of that. And then I had to sit through so much of this mystery plot about who killed this one person and she's being blackmailed. How are we going to stop it? So yeah. So this was a second chance romance. It was like friends to lovers, and it's a Highlander. And then the trigger warnings for this, there was some mention of domestic abuse and stuff that had happened to her in her marriage. So there's that. Then I read another fanfic. Told you I read a couple of those. And this one was called Forced, and it was by The Wolves 24. So this was a Hermione and Snape 6th year fanfic. And this is another one where a marriage needs to happen to protect Hermione. Sorry, my feet are cold, so I'm covering them with a blanket. And so Dumbledore forces her and Snape to marry. I've read other ones like this already. This one did not vibe for me, so I'm not going to talk about it too long. Snape was mean pretty much the whole time. I really don't like that setup. It should have been assigned to me too, though, because as I was reading it, the author of this fanfic did two things that pissed me off. Number one, even on like chapter 3, they said, this might not even be a romance. I don't even know if they'll like each other by the end. They said that in the notes, and I was like, I mean, obviously it's easier to see that on the back end. Like you can see how things turned out or not, but I was like, wow, okay. I mean, it's their prerogative whether they want to write it as a romance or not. It's their fanfic, but. And then also this was a case of the narrator or of the author like putting so many author's notes at the beginning of each chapter. I know that when they're writing that on fanfic, they really try to make sure that all like the triggers are there, but I'm one that I would rather they put the tags at the front of the book and then just say, please refer to what possible triggers could be in this book. Because at the beginning of each chapter, they would basically tell me what was going to happen in this. They were like, oh, there's going to be some spicy content in this one. Oh, there's going to be a dubious consent in this one. They would say it at the beginning of each one. And when you're like reading as a book, you're like, okay, but could you just say, please refer to the triggers? Because if you've listed what all of the trigger warnings are at the beginning and someone reads your book and then there is a dubious consent, you don't have to say which specific chapter it's in. But that's my opinion. Like, you trigger warned people at the beginning. And if they didn't read those trigger warnings, like, you've done your due diligence by putting that at the front. But I know AO3, like, I know that that's not the same as an author who has a published book. But those were just two things that, like, it ruined a lot of the suspense in some cases. And then again, Snape was a jackass the whole time. There was dubious consent and non-consensual situations at different times that just didn't need to be non-consent, because Hermione would have totally been into it if he would have, like, said, we're going to do this now. So it didn't make sense. So yeah, this one was the age gap. It's a forced marriage. Enemies to lovers, kind of. I don't know if they were really, like, into each other by the end. And yeah, I gave this one 2.5 stars, and it really only had a 2 on the spice scale, because a couple of the encounters, like, were not sexy because they were forced scenes and they weren't hot either. Like, you guys know, I don't mind that in a book, especially in a fanfic, and like, but they weren't written well, so they were not that fun. So yeah, there are scenes of dubious consent and non-consensual stuff, and it just wasn't enjoyable. I've read much better Snape and Hermione by now. Okay, so then I read The Black Lily by Juliette Cross, and I was starting her Vampire Blood series. Very excited to be reading this series, honestly. This book just threw me back to my love of, like, vampire goodness. And this one is really fun. I did not know what this series was about until I had my interview with Juliette. I had my interview with Juliette in February for Pharaoh Feb. And someone asked her if she had retellings. And I was like, oh, do you have retellings? And she's like, yeah, my vampire series is retellings. And I was like, what? So The Black Lily is a Cinderella retelling where Cinderella is an assassin sent to kill the vampire prince, because the vampires, like, rule their society and they're very cruel and not very nice. And so Arabelle goes undercover as a vampire noble. Well, she goes undercover as a human noble who is looking to be the prince's, like, concubine, because he's looking for blood concubines, because he needs those to be healthy and alive. And she has a gold-tipped dagger, because gold is dangerous to vampires in this world. And he is instantly drawn to her. He is so entranced by her. And so they go outside and are, like, dancing together, and, like, he wants to smooch with her, and she stabs him with a golden dagger and runs away. And so instead of leaving her glass slipper behind, she leaves a golden dagger in his chest and flees. Unfortunately / fortunately for us, it doesn't actually kill him. And now he wants to hunt down this woman, not just because she tried to kill him, but because he was extremely attracted to her and he wants her for his own. So this was so much fun. It is the setup for a 4-book series. I am very intrigued to read The Red Lily, which is going to be, that one's going to be a Red Riding Hood retelling, and I've already met the Red Riding Hood character, and I am ready. Okay, I am ready for her. There are these big wolves, and that one's going to be with the prince's captain of the guard, and then the Red Riding Hood character we meet, and I'm very excited. And yeah, this was a 4-star book for me. So Marius and Arabella, when they were together, they were fire, okay? They were fire. The thing in this one is they are very, like, they're separated for a good chunk of the book. Like, they're together in the thing, and then he's hunting her down, and then they'll meet up, and then, like, they're enemies, so they're gone. So there were big parts of this book where they weren't together, and I wasn't a huge fan of those, because I fully believe in a romance novel, you get your characters together as soon as you can, and you keep them together for as much of the book as you can. So that was, like, I was like, oh, I want them to be together. So, but I gave this 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale, because there was some, you know, obviously some blood play happening in this. So that was fun. All right, then I read one more fanfic for the week, and it was called Sugar and Spice, and this was by InLoveWithForever. And guys, I was sure this one was going to be 5-star. I was so ready for it because this one was a menage. This was a Theo, Draco, and Hermione menage, okay? Theo Knott is someone who shows up in fanfics every now and then. And this one, Theo and Draco have been in a relationship for a while. They had always liked each other when they were younger, and then after this one takes place, it's an 8th year fanfic, so Theo and Draco and Hermione are all back at school. Harry and Ron are not, and they get assigned a group project together. The 3 of them do, and Draco has liked her for a very long time, and Theo has liked her for a while as well, and they both have talked about how much they both like Hermione to each other because they are both bisexual and they're both willing to be with women as well. They don't have an open relationship, but they are looking to have Hermione be in their relationship. And in this fanfic, triads used to be a big part of wizarding society, and they had just gotten away from it. And so they aren't really prejudiced against for them being a triad. They're more prejudiced against the fact that it's Draco and Hermione, Theo and Draco and Hermione. That's more where the prejudice comes from, not from them being 3 together. So where this fell apart for me, is that it wasn't really a menage, okay? Which you'd think it would be because they are a bisexual couple together who's bringing in Hermione. Oh, look, it perfectly worked with my nails, right? But they are dating her separately. So they really are working more towards the polyamory side of it, where Theo and Draco have a relationship, Draco and Hermione have a relationship, and Hermione and Theo have a relationship. And I mean, they do have the dynamic when it's the 3 of them, but we never got to see a male-male scene in this book, besides they jack each other off in front of her in one. But otherwise, it's always they never do a menage scene. They share a bed together, they cuddle together. There was very beautiful emotional moments between them all. There was sweet, tender moments, but this was not a MMF. It was more an MM and then an MF and an MF, that. And so I was so let down. Because I was this is literally an MMF. There's no reason why there isn't threesome scenes. And there are scenes, again, where one of them is watching the other 2, or they're with one person and the other person, but there's not a single, menage sex scene in the book. And I don't know if the author of this was just nervous to write that, but this was tagged as an MMF, and there was no MMF sex in the entire fic. And I'm this is a fanfic. What are you doing? You guys know how I get with this. So this one ended up being a 3-star for me because why did you call it an MMF? Why did you make them a polyamorous relationship and there's no 3-way fucking here? That doesn't work with me. You tricked me. I read the whole book and it was not there. There's also a sequel to this one. I'm not going to read it. I don't care. They had a happily after by the end. I felt cheated. It was 4-star for spice because there's a good amount of spice, but it's not the kind that I want. And then the last one that I read, which thankfully fulfilled what I wanted in this area, and that was Deceived by the Gargoyles by Lillian Lark. So, I have been very staunch about the fact that I do not enjoy reverse harems. However, there's 2 reasons why I read this one. Number 1, Lillian Lark is hilarious. She does recommendations on TikTok, monster romances, and she's fantastic. She's the reason why I read The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, so I give her cred. Also, she promised that there was sword crossing in this book, and I believe her because she has not steered me wrong with the MMF stuff yet. Got really close in this one because, again, this one is more of a polyamorous situation, and I would actually not call this a reverse harem. It is in the term of there's 1 woman and 3 men, but the way that this one plays out, these 3 gargoyles, they are already in a polyamorous triad where there's Elliot, who is mates with both Alistar and Broderick, But Alistar and Broderick, they are not mates to each other. So they are both mates to Elliot. So those are the 3 gargoyles that we have. They, like, Broderick and Alistar, they will be in a sexual situation together, like, if Elliot wants that. But they're not, like, a couple. They are just, they both love Elliot. Elliot feels that the dynamic of them has been off lately. They recently lost their pack, like, elder, because gargoyles, when they're at the end of their life, they will fully turn to stone, and that's how they, like, pass on. And now Alistar is the pack leader, and he's just feeling a lot of pressure being the leader and everything. And so Elliot wants to bring someone else into their family. Also, they want children, and so he does a matchmaking service, which that's how this relates to the other books in the other book in the series is the Stalked by the Kraken. It's the same, like, matchmaking place. And Elliot starts dating Grace, who is a curvy, plus-size witch. She's a librarian, and she's looking for a mate. And so Elliot, he does deceive her because he doesn't tell her that he has 2 partners already. Now, they do have an open relationship, but they're supposed to tell if they are interested in seeing someone else. Like, that's how their relationship works. And so he doesn't say because he's nervous about bringing Grace in, but he wants her there. So that is him kind of deceiving her in the beginning. Once Grace finds out about the other 2, she's very hesitant, but they also feel this, like, pull to her. Like, it's clear that there is something between these 3. So this book is really all 3 of them dating her, and then her being with all of them. So that aspect of it was the reverse harem type, but there are MMF scenes in this book. There are MMF scenes in this book. There is MM scenes in this book. So this really had all the different configurations that I wanted. Also, everyone in this relationship has some kind of deep feelings for each other. And I really liked that. So I still don't love reverse harem. Please don't recommend me a bunch of them. I tend to delete them out of my book rec form because I've said I don't want them. Unfortunately for y'all, I know you want to recommend them to me, but I find my reverse harem recs on my own because I know what I want, and I have read so many that I don't like so many that I don't like because they never have what I want. This one was the closest to having what I want that I've seen, and I enjoyed that. So yeah, so there was sword crossing, and again, this one felt more like a poly quad than a reverse harem because it isn't all about the woman, like, in the sense that they all are attracted to her. I love that. Also, I won't say which one. One of the gargoyles, he's never even been with a woman before. Grace is the first woman he's ever been with, and the connection that they end up with is so beautiful. There is also some BDSM and kinky stuff in here. There's also some grumpy and sunshine. Well, like 2 sunshines and 2 grumpies going on in here. There's also size difference. There's nodding, and I like that. I don't like Omegaverse, but I don't mind, like, nodding in this. So there we go. Those are all the books that I read this last week. Let me know some of what you read, what you're liking, if you've read these, what you think. And yeah, thank you to the new channel members. That means so much to me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.